2021 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the agenda today, there are speaker request forms to the left of the dais. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the secretary. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. The public hearing on item number 1, the approval of the September 9th, 2021 Zoning Board of Adjustment minutes, is hereby opened. All right, Rachel made the motion to approve the September 9th minutes.
Second.
And Karen seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Hello, there we go.
There you go.
Good morning, Sarah Hansel, Planning Projects Division. Item number 2 is for a property located at 3616 Jackson Boulevard. And this is a variance request to allow a 6-foot fence in lieu of a maximum 4-foot high fence in the front yard, and with a front yard setback of 0 feet in lieu of 25 feet. At present, a portion of the fence is already constructed, and the applicant would like to expand the portion that is there today. In the written statement that they submitted with the application, they noted that the purpose of the fence is to block headlights pointed at the home from commercial development to the south, which you can see there is Marco's Pizza, and to reduce traffic noise and limit the effect of the occasional stray ball that comes into their yard from the golf course to the south. This is an aerial view of the property. You can see the single-family residence. I'll point out where the existing fence is here. You can see it in this view. The portion, just a small portion right here that is already built. As I mentioned earlier, this is the Marco's Pizza, and this driveway here is directly adjacent to where their driveway is and the front window of their home, which is right here. The property is zoned medium-density residential district within a Canyon Lake overlay zoning district. Has a future land use category of urban neighborhood. Here's the major street plan. You can see Jackson Boulevard is identified here. It is a principal arterial on the city's major street plan. And here's the site plan showing what they'd like to do and the portion that's already there. Here's the single family home. This portion of the fence is already there. You'll see it in the site photos when you go through there next. And they'd like to extend this fence along the southern lot line here and then down along the western line. Here's Jackson Boulevard and the approach to the home. Although the fence is located directly on the property line at 0 feet, it's about 8 feet from the sidewalk adjacent to Jackson Boulevard. Here's a rendering of the fence. It's a 6-foot solid cedar privacy fence. And here's a photo. This was taken a few days ago. This is looking northwest into the subject property. This is moving just slightly down along the sidewalk directly in front of the fence. Here is the commercial development to the south, and here you can see the cars that are parked there for the pizzas that are coming and going. This is looking east along Jackson Boulevard. See portion here. This is where the fence would continue to be constructed and go that way. And this is looking further east at some of the adjacent residential development in this neighborhood. Here we are turned the other direction towards Canyon Lake Park, and then further down here along 6th Avenue, again showing some of the other residences that are located in this area. So in reviewing this variance request, we looked really closely at this one. We're certainly very understanding of the applicant's need to want to block the headlights that are coming into their front window and to reduce the noise that comes in from the traffic. You know, it's a good time to consider the regulations for fences and why they are set up the way they are. As a reminder, there's different requirements for fences that are located in rear yards versus front yards. There are many neighborhoods across town where we have rear yards that abut Arterial Street. Jackson Boulevard is one of them. Sheridan Lake Road is another one in this area where you see this quite commonly. And in those areas, you'll see a privacy fence in a backyard. The 6 foot allows, you get the benefit, the height that provides the screening and the privacy, but it's not in conflict with visibility and safety of the traveling public. And in large part, that is to there not being driveways that are coming off of these properties because it's in the rear yard. The regulations for front yard property, or in the front yard, a property can only have a maximum 4 foot high fence. And that still allows some separation between the public right-of-way and the private residence, but it does not create visual obstructions to the traveling public in areas where there are bound to be multiple driveways and a higher prominence of foot traffic. So a maximum 4 foot fence in the front yard lends itself more towards neighborhood character. And that's, as you drive across town in Rapid City, it's, you don't see tall fences like that in front yards. So what we often see, particularly in this neighborhood, you can see from the site photos, is that landscaping helps to provide an added visual and noise buffer. And so that's what we've encouraged the applicant to do in this case, is to consider some of those alternatives. So as a reminder, there are specific criteria that we must look at in making a recommendation for a variance. There are 4. The first one being, is the use allowed in the district? So for this application, the use itself is not an issue. The fence, that there would be a fence, is okay. It really gets to the height and design of the fence and its location on the property where the issue is created. The second criteria is whether there are special circumstances or conditions that do not apply generally in the district, such as topography or other situations with the lot. We do note that there is a presence of commercial use directly south of the applicant's property. However, this is a mixed-use corridor. There's a lot of mix of commercial structures, residential structures, and parks and open space. And so under the high bar of the criteria that we have to look at, we do not find that there's a special circumstance in this situation. The third criteria is the variance the minimum adjustment necessary for the reasonable use of land? And looking at the precedents for this neighborhood and looking how other properties handle the need to separate their property from the right-of-way, we would find that building a shorter fence, maximum 4 foot, in combination with landscaping or other hedges would be more conducive to what would be considered a minimal adjustment necessary. And then lastly, the fourth criteria is the variance in harmony with intent of the zoning ordinance. And for this one, we're looking at the factors specific to this application, but we're also looking at, if this is approved, these factors are pretty common throughout the corridor. So what kind of precedent would be set for fences like this, creating essentially a wall between the right-of-way and the private property? So as we look at that, we don't find that that would be in harmony with the intent of the zoning district. So in reviewing these criteria, we're not able to provide a recommendation to approve. We are recommending that the Zoning Board of Adjustment deny this application and are encouraging the applicant to consider some other solutions to get at the issues that they'd like to address. And I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions for her at this point? Haven?
I guess, my question, is what are the what would be the applicant's alternatives if this was denied?
The applicant would need to remove the portion of the fence that's currently constructed, and some alternatives that we've suggested would be to construct a 4 foot cedar fence, and then any kind of shrubs or landscaping that they wanted to plant. There would be no zoning review or building permit review of any kind for that. They could plant anything that they'd like to something fast growing. They're going to look for something with some height, I assume, but those are the suggestions that we've made for them.
So what about the setback then from Jackson?
So what they're proposing is a 0 foot setback. In the zoning district that they're in, a 25 foot setback would be required. So the variance, that's a good question, thank you, because the variance is about the height of the fence, but it's also about the location of the fence, proposed to be built right on top of their lot line.
And is a 25-foot setback, is that a reasonable alternative in this case?
That's not a scenario that they showed on their site plan, but a 25-foot setback would put the fence very near to the front of their house. So it would sort of, let's go to the aerial view here. given the dimensions of this lot, you know, putting the fence 25 foot back would, you know, put it about here. So that's not an alternative that they've shown on their site plan. But if that would be something the board would want to discuss.
And would that then be a 4-foot, or could they do an 8-foot there?
No, the maximum height is 4 feet. So even if it's,
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
so a 6-foot fence cannot be in the 25-foot front yard setback. So if they were to put the fence back 25 feet, it could be 6 feet, even if it is in front of the house. The ordinance doesn't read that that the 6-foot fence has to be behind the residence or even with the residence. It just says it cannot be in the front yard. But that's probably not a practical solution in this case because of the location of the residence. It really wouldn't give them any front yard to enjoy or have privacy, and that's an expenditure to put up that 6-foot fence. I think the other solution that Sarah mentioned, leaving the fence where it is or removing it and planting hedges. We've seen this issue arise in many other areas of the city where we do have that mixed use, residential on one side, commercial on the other. And the plant material that seems to work the best, grow the quickest, are lilac bushes. They're easy to trim, they grow thick, it blocks headlights, and there are some even along this corridor if you drive up and down Jackson Boulevard. This is an entranceway to the city, and I think that was probably one of our biggest concerns, is the concern that this could establish a precedent, as we've seen other variances do, and then having that character established along an entryway into the hills where we've got our residential development literally walled off from the street corridor. So we are hopeful and certainly understand that this property owner has valid concerns. With Marco Pizza across the street, drivers coming and going, headlights shining into their home, certainly something that they need to remedy. Placing the fence, though, looking at it from the criteria set forth in the variance, we just couldn't find a way to support it.
Haven? You still have the floor if you'd like it. Okay. If there aren't any other questions for staff at this point, I'll make the speaker request happen now. I have a request from Patrick Driver, if you'd like to come up and address. I am so sorry.
if you want to use any of these.
Once you're up, you
Yeah,
can
actually,
correctly
could you go back
identify
to the
yourself.
one where you were showing how far this was going to extend on that side?
If you could just give your
The
name and
photo you
address
took.
for the records.
Oh, actually, the site plan where you were showing where it was going to extend going, because you've got the distance wrong. There's a house right here, or, yeah, there's a house right here. Our fence wouldn't go that far. Okay, one of the pictures showed our fence going beyond somebody else's house. We live between two houses. Going that, yeah, it would not come this far. See
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, I
Yeah.
just pulled the
Yeah.
marker too far.
You'll notice there's that, see the white Toyota? That's my house. This is a house here. Our fence would not extend all the way over to the street. We're between two homes.
Let me correct that, yeah.
Excuse me, you can see the white.
I'm sorry, sir, if you want to address us too, can you come up to the microphone?
I got it. Okay, so it would actually come between we wouldn't go into Carol's property.
Property line is right where that stick is.
Oh, yeah, there's a
See it?
stick. I don't know if y'all can see, there's two sticks right there. That's where our property line on the side is.
You're talking about the stakes,
The two stakes
one
right there.
close to the house and one in the middle of the lawn.
Correct. That's the further our property line comes this way. Okay, from there I'll go. Thank you, dear.
Of course.
It's the car lights. We've kind of had this ongoing battle with Marcos, and the young drivers that are there have we drove around before we put this fence up. I had a fence there before. It was taken down by city, county, state, whoever, when they redid Jackson Boulevard. Because the water line to our home was in our yard and cut over to 6th. And so they needed to take the fence down in order to access it, to pull us out to Jackson Boulevard. And they said they would put the fence back. You'll note that there's not a fence in my yard except for this portion. Once the Jackson Boulevard renovation was done, I started here at the city, and they said go to the state, and they told me to go to DOT, who sent me back to the city. It was this big circle. I never got my fence back. They did, however, leave where the poles had been, so we knew where the fence was, and this is actually higher than the original, further from the sidewalk than the original fence was. And we had come up with a fence idea by driving around, seeing what other people had for fences. So there are fences made like this of cedar that are on Sheridan Lake Road and in the Canyon Lake area behind us that are in front of people's front, not just their backyard, but their front yard. The gentlemen and young ladies that work at Marco's, they can get 6, 7 cars in that non-designated parking area, and for some reason they find it a real kick to keep backing up until they've turned their lights not just into my one room, which was pointed out on the map, which is my kitchen. They do it at an angle so that they can get it in my living room also. And it's just, they're young. They like to play loud music. We turn on the light in our kitchen, they turn the music louder. We turn on our light in the living room, they turn their music louder and back their vehicles up. As this fence went up, and it's become quite a little character on Jackson Boulevard, the neighbors talk about it, they get a real kick out of it. This is Mr. Wilson, and I've got Dennis the Menace multiplied across the street. Even the people that work at the auto shops and stuff down further on Jackson Boulevard are aware of the situation. And these kids kept backing up until they ran into the fence and couldn't back their cars higher in order to get around this fence to get into my kitchen. But then they learned if they angled a little bit more, they could get into my living room. Courtesy of COVID, I'm still working at home. My company has not sent us back. So I'm here 24/7 now. So I'd like to respite in my home when I'm not working. And I'm not going to go in the back bedroom where I have my office set up. I'd like to go into my living room. At night, I'd like to bake in my kitchen. But I can't. I have this coming in. We have golf balls, which I expected. I live across from a golf course. That we expected. But now that I have a full-fledged bar across the street, I also have drunks that see those stairs there that pass out on those stairs. We've had knife-wielding people come and knock on the doors trying to steal pickups. And they end up stealing pickups and running into the golf course. The neighborhood not enjoying that. Marco's across the street. And we started with talking to the drivers first. We started base 1. I was military. Don't break the chain of command. Started with the drivers first. They thought it was funny. Went to the manager, asked if they could please, it's not a parking spot they're tearing up the grass over there. The city has paid a lot of money for that bike path, and these kids are just ripping up the grass. They back in. They've almost caused multiple accidents over there, and now pedestrians have to watch. We've got a full parking lot there that the pedestrians walk around so they don't have to deal with getting hit by a car. And now they've got all these pizza delivery people that they have to risk walking around. And it's just a dangerous environment for them. And we went to the owner, who has ignored our pleas. So we went and decided, okay, what can we do to just protect us? We went to our neighbors and told them what we were doing. They all, who also were strained by this situation across the street, had no problem with us putting up this fence. We checked with them first. And then we decided, well, maybe we should check and make sure we're within what the city says we can do. So we called in, see if there were any complaints and if we were in variance. We initiated the call to y'all to see if we were doing the right thing. We didn't go ahead and create a 6-foot fence all the way around our front yard just because this was the irritation. We wanted to make sure we're tax-paying citizens, that, we own the house. We should be able to know who's coming into our yard and decide who's coming into our home, whether it's via us inviting them in, or if they're, I don't want lights in my house. You all don't want lights in your house. You don't want children turning music up really loud just because they know you're standing in a certain room. It's not fair as a property owner to not have any kind of respite like that. Lilac bushes are going to take a while to grow. It's September. I'm not going to be able, and at quite a bit of cost to an area where I used to have a fence in the first place, and I don't have a fence. We're just trying to make peace with what we have across the street. All we get told is hire an attorney. It's city property across there. We're trying to do something on our own property that we pay for. And, it's not going to be gaudy. We will, we'll maintain the fence. We just, it's a quality of life issue for us, I get off work, I don't want to, I lock up that room that I don't have to be in. And I want to do things in my front area of my house. I want to be able to go out to my front yard and sit on the stoop and watch the golfers and the little kids on their bicycles and the parents pushing their strollers down and not panicking when they're going down in front of the pizza place. But at the very least, I'd like to go outside and have some sunshine in my front yard. We've tried everything that we can think of to appease the situation. It's scary when you wake up and you've got somebody sleeping on your front stoop. You hear weird bangs. We put in the motion detector lights. It'd be nice to not have to worry about that front door. But, I understand worrying about the block off. My next door neighbor ended up spending a great deal of money landscaping his front yard. He won't be putting up a fence soon. He's very irritated because he has put that expense in and he has these headlights and he's not going to put any more into that front yard. There's not a lot of us property owners who live in our homes on Jackson Boulevard. A lot of them are renters out there, but it's just quality of life. As a homeowner, we'd like to enjoy our home and only allow people into our home, whether it's in our house, in our front yard, or through our kitchen and living room that we've invited. I hope you take all that in. Thank you.
Okay, 1 second. I usually ask people to do this at the start. You are Mrs. Driver.
I'm sorry, yeah, I'm
You're the
Patricia
applicant.
Driver. Yes.
Okay, that's just for our records as
Yep,
we
nope,
keep
not a
track of the
problem.
meeting.
And the other that spoke with me was my husband, Gerald Driver, also
Perfect.
occupant.
There may be some questions for you,
Oh, sure.
but I go to Kelly. He's got the light up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have two quick questions. One being, under what conditions was that fence built? I don't think I caught how or when.
This one that we
The
currently, that
existing, yeah.
portion, to be honest, to make sure that the lights weren't coming in, the kids, we started with just the lights. And we had gone around and we were trying to think of different ways to block out. We'd look at Lowe's and Menards at different clip-together plastic fences and that kind of thing you can do.
Right.
And then we started with a little bit smaller fence, and they started backing their cars up, so we just kind of got a little bit higher and higher.
But this was built by you, the property
Yeah,
owner?
yeah, we
Okay,
built this,
okay,
yeah.
I didn't catch that. Second question is, has there been any public feedback or comments from the adjoining neighbors? Have any of those people reached out to management at Marco's about any other issues? I see 4 houses with frontage across from that store, and I was just curious.
I don't know if they reached out to, like the owner, but I know our next door neighbor has gone over and talked to him. There are times when you see neighbors just standing on the sidewalk doing this. And the stare down doesn't do much with, yeah, I know they've gone over and asked them.
Okay, nothing formal, nothing through public record?
Oh, we were just advised that, we could try and take up a complaint with the Attorney General. That would be our next avenue, and that's kind of
Okay, thank you.
Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question, more out of curiosity, but as the delivery drivers and people coming in and out of that area at Marco's, I wonder if we can maybe look at the overhead. Are they backing out onto Jackson?
No,
No?
they back into that spot, so it's pretty busy, and that's like a really low population of cars there. They're usually parked over and around each other.
Okay. So as they leave, the headlights are traveling straight across the street?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That answers my question, thank you.
Yeah, they've miraculously been kind of good for the last week. I'm curious what has caused that.
I'm going to hop in with a question about the previous fence that came down during the Jackson Boulevard reconstruction. I guess, how long that fence was up when you purchased the house,
The
basically?
house, yeah, in 2007.
And then, I guess maybe a comment from the city on, I know reconstruction of roads, if there is something in the right-of-way that, whether it should or shouldn't have been there, if the body, whether it's DOT or the city, has the right to force it to be taken down. Is that correct, Vicki?
So, as you know, Jackson Boulevard is a state highway. It was a state project. When they removed that fence, and there are times when they have to remove a part of a structure, they always send the property owner to the city to work through the issues of remedying what they removed. You've reviewed variances in the past if a structure didn't meet a setback as a result of having to remove part of it. The previous fence, we don't have any record that a permit was ever obtained for that. So it was either illegal or maybe constructed before 1968, so maybe legal nonconforming. I would think that DOT, as they do in many instances when visiting with our office, would have been told that any new fence could not exceed 4 feet without a variance, which may be why they were directed to come to the city, because the Department of Transportation does not secure those variances. They put that on the property owner. And I, not knowing the specific history on this one, but just going to procedure, I would guess that probably is why they went full circle with the state on trying to get that fence back.
See, they hadn't told us anything like that. They removed it so they didn't have to run over it to get to the water line, because they didn't think they could go over it, because the water line was so close to our residence. They figured they would damage it anyway. But yeah, they didn't say anything like that. And the house is 1951, so I have no idea when the fence had gone up.
And just so I don't get lost, because we got more folks out here, my second question is just this. It's not part of the fence discussion, whether it's causing the fence or not, but that doesn't look like a parking lot that at Marco's of any sort of, that meets any sort of regulation. If it's being used in a way that it shouldn't, this is a city property, can't the applicant go to the city in some fashion and bring that up?
So while she was speaking, and I think she did a great job explaining the situation, I wrote a note to contact the director of Parks and Rec,
Okay.
since we do have some authority over who is the leaseholder of our property, and see if we can't have a discussion from that level and at least get the parking in conformance with the regulations.
Yeah, it just seems like we aren't necessarily allowed to consider something that happens on a different property. When we have a zoning discussion, we have to keep our action to the property, but this, it just doesn't look right, so
And
if we could share
unfortunately,
anything
Mr.
with
Chair, if they're parking correctly, they would never back into the right-of-way. And so.
or back
they're
into,
going
off
to-
of a, off of a highway, back into the parking area.
That's right. So if this gets corrected, every vehicle that leaves this site will have headlights pointing into this property. So rectifying that and correcting it is, in essence, going to put everyone entering the right-of-way into forward motion.
If there's enough room to turn a car
If there-
around
yes.
on their property.
It appears they may have enough parking for two.
Well, anyway, I got pretty far afield there. I apologize. Rachel, you're up.
I don't know if this is entirely relevant, but I don't, to my knowledge, the DOT doesn't actually do water projects. So I'm going to guess that there was more of a city.
Oh, yeah, there were tons of people trying to figure out
Yeah,
who's
city
what,
involvement in
yeah.
that. And maybe that's what Todd is about to address, but just briefly, Todd, if you don't mind, does Marcos have a conditional use permit for alcohol or malt beverage license or something like that? I mean, it seems like this is the reason why they have to come to the city to get permits and licenses, because we want to ensure that a business isn't causing problems for their neighbors, by virtue of the fact that they're serving alcohol or, being an establishment like that. And usually I think it's the people drinking alcohol, not the people delivering pizza, but I still think that that's, maybe another avenue for, because even if you get a 6-foot fence, which unfortunately I don't see, I kind of feel like even though I want to say yes, like I can't see like a legal way for me to say yes. Even if you had a 6-foot fence, teenagers are smart and they're still going to get a way around it to be jerks. And, I'm hoping that we can find a way, or you can find a way that you can actually get some peace in your home. And that might be another avenue to look at, is saying, well, this is causing a public nuisance when it's not supposed to be. But anyway, so that's, I don't know, Vicki, if you have any comments on that?
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So yes, there is a conditional use permit for the on-sale liquor portion of this establishment. And funny enough, at your next Planning Commission meeting, you will be reviewing a major amendment to that conditional use permit to expand the on-sale liquor to a beer cart that would then go throughout the golf course to take drinks to those that are playing on the course. So we will have their full attention, and we will pull that conditional use permit, sit down with the Parks and Recs director, review it to ensure that there is compliance on leased property with the city, and then we'll have an opportunity to discuss it at our next meeting as well, when review expanding the on-sale liquor, which is being operated by the city, not by Marcos.
Okay, so, and that's another public comment opportunity. I know, your time is busy, but it might be worth it for you to show up and leave some comments about that. If they're being a nuisance in the neighborhood, that's the whole point of having that public forum.
And they should receive a letter of notification on that next week as well.
Okay, thank you. And then I think, Todd, would you be able to address just, I don't know how much it matters, but whether snaking a water line or, connecting to a water line through their property would be the DOT entity of a project or the city entity?
Yeah, for projects like these, it's actually both. It looks like on this project, the DOT had to acquire a temporary easement to do some grading work on this property, so that would have been the DOT. Their right-of-way agents typically would meet with property owners and negotiate that easement, so if they're doing work on the private property side, they would have an agreement that would say if they're going to replace the fence or not. And that would be up to the DOT. We did do a water service work to tie in their water service because it did go over to 6th Street, or 6th Avenue. And so we tied it in directly into Jackson Boulevard with the project. And then it looks like the fence that was there was a chain link fence. It was like a 4-foot or 3-foot chain link fence that was replaced or taken down with the project.
Thank you, Todd.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Karen?
Mr. Chair,
Oh, sorry,
just
Vicki.
quickly, a 4-foot chain link fence could be placed on the lot line without a variance or without a permit. That would be allowed.
Karen?
Thank you. Vicki, to follow up on that, the question I had was about the 4-foot fence. Can a full cedar fence also be put up on the property line? So not necessarily just a chain link, but a regular solid fence could go up, right?
A 4-foot
4
high
foot.
solid fence could be along that front lot line.
Right, okay. Looking at the photos and how the fence looks today and on the property, to me, it's walling off, and I've dealt with a lot of fence variances of height over the years, and it always looks like an obstacle for the driver coming by to see that. But more than that, it's the people that have had fences like that. I've known of one, at least, that they took it back down because it was like they're in a cocoon, kind of, and they don't see the people walking by or the strollers and their babies walking by. They just don't see anything but that fence. And for me, it's out of character for the neighborhood to see that, any neighborhood, but this one seems to make it out of character when I look at the photos. So it's hard for me to say it's okay to do that. I understand the plight of the neighborhood or the neighbors from the lights and stuff like that, but it seems like there's some alternatives that we should look at first, and one would be the conditional use permit that's coming up, because you've got Marco's there, and they've got to be good neighbors. They live in that neighborhood, and if it's run by the city and the city has some say in it, it seems like we should be able to cure some of that. It might not be all of it, but at least would help to some degree so the neighbors wouldn't have to deal with all the cars coming in with trying to aggravate the neighbors. It sounds like that's what she's trying to say, is that they're aggravating them. And so I'd like to see that discussion before we decide that, this is good or bad. It's hard for me from a legal standpoint to say that they don't have reasonable use of their land if they can put up a 4-foot fence, or they can put up lilac bushes or something like that to alleviate some of that. So it seems like there's other alternatives rather than this 6-foot fence. So it'd be hard for me to support it. So I guess the choice to us is either deny it, in my opinion, either to deny it, or maybe continue. If you can continue it, I think we could do that, to listen to the conditional use permit. So that's a couple of my thoughts, so thanks.
Thanks, Karen. Other comments from the commission? Questions? If there aren't, I'd look for a motion then. Okay. Vince made the motion to deny the variance request, and Eric Ottenbacher seconded that. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor of the motion to deny, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion to deny carries. That is our last item on the Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. I'd look for a motion to adjourn Zoning Board of Adjustment. All right, Karen made the motion, and Rachel seconded that motion. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned. We'll now commence the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for September 23rd, 2021. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda, please fill out a speaker request form and hand it to the staff seated along the left wall. And if you still have your cell phone on, please turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. Items 1 through 4 today have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision with the exception of the following item. Item 4, 21 UR 017. The Rapid City Planning Commission's action on this item is final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 4 that staff would like removed? Are there any items 1 through 4 that any planning commissioner would like removed for separate consideration? And are there any items 1 through 4 that any audience member would like removed for separate consideration? The chair would then entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items 1 through 4 in accordance with staff's recommendations. All right, Vince made the motion. Mike Gallagher seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5.
Item number 5, 21 PD 030, is a major amendment to a plan development to allow an on-sale liquor in conjunction with a virtual golf simulator business called X Golf. The proposed use is located at the Rushmore Mall. Here you can see an aerial view of the mall, and the proposed use is proposed to occur within an existing suite. Happens to be this one right here. Property is zoned Shopping Center 2 with a planned development overlay, and the future land use designation for this property is mixed use commercial. On top of that, the Rushmore Mall is designated as a community activity center in the city's comprehensive plan. With the community activity center, there are recommendations to continue to diversify the types of uses at the mall to complement the existing retail and restaurant uses there. You know, that includes introducing residential uses and other uses, which isn't part of this application, but looking for more entertainment focuses is part of the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. Here's a map of the major street plan. You can see Disc Drive is a collector street, and that will be where the main access to this property is from. This is showing the major tenants at the mall. Here you can see Suite 458. That's where this new business is proposed to be located. It's about an 8,400 square foot suite. This is the floor plan that they submitted with the application. This use is going to involve 8 different simulator rooms, as well as a lounge area and a bar. The bar is going to be self-serve, so similar to some of the newer businesses we've seen come in recently, such as Pour 54 downtown. That's where you have that kiosk that's monitored by a staff member, but it's all based on a wristband system, and you put your card in and you can sample different beers. With the operations plan, they noted that they'll have 2 full-time employees and 6 to 8 part-time employees. And the hours of operation of this business are going to extend beyond those of the regular, the other businesses at the mall. So they do have their own entrance from the outside that's located here, and that will accommodate the extended hours of operation. You'll notice on the site plan there is an outdoor patio. You can see that here. At this time, they're not proposing to have any consumption of alcohol on this patio. That's a stipulation of approval of the CUP. That is something they're interested in considering for the future, so they may come back with an amendment, and with that amendment, they'll provide information about the fencing and screening and the security requirements that they'll provide. But for now, there will be no on-sale consumption in that area. In looking at the operations plan that they've submitted and looking at how this use fits in with those that are existing at the mall, there are several other on-sale liquor permits in the area. Got Olive Garden, Red Lobster, some of the tenants within the mall. More recently, the K9 indoor dog park was approved. So we don't see any conflicts with this land use or the effect of the on-sale liquor request, and we are recommending that this application be approved with the stipulations that are noted in the report.
Thanks, Sarah. Any questions for her on this application? Comments? Eric Odenbacher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, we've had a discussion before in the past about saturation of liquor licenses in particular areas and areas that we wanted to focus on where liquor establishments should be, like downtown, for example. So how many within, a reasonable radius of a half mile do we have? How many liquor licenses or establishments do we have in this particular area?
I don't have an exact number, but just to point out the ones that we know are there, we've got the Texas Roadhouse, Olive Garden, Red Lobster, and the K9 bar. So there are at least 4. I don't know if the Cactus Kim's Grill and Bar that was approved previously is still operating, but that would be a 5th one if it is.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Vicky?
That is an excellent comment by Eric, and truly when that was written into the ordinance, there was concern that there would be a line of bars, and that would potentially be a saturation and may really turn the character of a neighborhood around. We did identify that the area that should support that is the Central Business District, where you go in the evening on a weekend to have fun, and that should be where it's concentrated. What we've landed on, with the support of the Planning Commission, is that when on sale is in conjunction with something else, so it's really the secondary reason why someone would go, it really doesn't lend itself to the saturation, but something we always include in our reports is any on sales that we're aware of in that vicinity, so that you recognize that we are acknowledging it, even if these on sales are in conjunction with a dog park or a restaurant. Different character than if it was truly a bar or what we used to call a tavern. So a great question, thank you.
Vince?
And there it is. Okay. I know like with the dog park, the owners were present to answer some of our questions, because one of the things that we were concerned about is the control of the sale. And in this particular case, yes, I know there are places downtown where you buy your wristband and you pour yourself your own beverages, alcoholic beverages. Is the same thing going to be done here as far as the way it's being monitored?
That's correct. It's a good question. The applicant has indicated it's actually the exact same model and type of self-serve devices that are used at that other location downtown we just discussed.
Okay, thanks.
Ethan?
Just to clarify, are the applicant asking for a beer and wine license or an on-sale liquor?
Oh, thank you. Good clarification. We always publish these requests as on-sale liquor. They will only actually go for the beer and wine aspect of that because there aren't liquor licenses available, but we do publish just so we have kind of the full notice.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just a little planning 101. So in the zoning ordinance, anything that has alcohol sales is known as on-sale liquor, whether it's beer, wine, or hard liquor. When it comes to the licensing part of it that goes through council, those are very specific. And I think Sarah did a good job explaining that.
Other comments on this one? Questions? If not, all right, Vince? Or Vince made the motion to approve per the staff's recommendations. And Rachel seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6.
Excuse me. Good morning. This is item number 6. This is an initial plan development to allow an apartment complex. More specifically, this is a request by KTM for Yasmin Dream 2 LLC to allow a 384-unit, 17-apartment building apartment complex that will include 128 one-bedroom units, 188 two-bedroom units, and 68 three-bedroom units, as well as a leasing office, clubhouse, pool, dog park, and 72 garage stalls. The proposed apartment development will be known as Diamond Ridge Villas. The current zoning is medium-density residential, which allows for multifamily development. Future land use is urban neighborhood. And here you can see the major street plan. So this is in a growing area. You see those dashed lines there, which mean proposed routes that streets will take. This lot connects to future East Anamosa Street, which is a proposed principal arterial street. The applicant has submitted a development engineering plan to create the parcel that these apartments are going to sit on, and that will require dedication of right-of-way along the future East Anamosa Street corridor. So here we have our site plan. The applicants are requesting an exception for parking islands. There are 613 spaces in total on this site plan, and there's a requirement that there's a landscape island for every 50 spaces. So as you can see, there are 0 landscape islands on here. The exception is to reduce that number to 0. Staff supports that exception because they do have a lot of the peninsulas that you see on there, and the layout of the parking lot doesn't lend itself to landscaping islands. This is a elevation of what the buildings will look like. There'll be 2 stories or 25 feet in height. And here's some photos that I took out at the area earlier this week. This is looking north along Diamond Ridge. This is looking south along Diamond Ridge. This is looking west along Radiant. And then this is looking north onto the property where the apartments will be built. This is looking south from the end of Radiant Avenue. And then this is looking back east on Radiant Avenue. And then they do have a sign posted. So staff is recommending that the commission approve this application with stipulations as noted in the staff report. There are a considerable number of stipulations associated with this request that must be met prior to submittal of a final plan development application. One of those is that they need to submit a revised master plan. So the most recent master plan that we have shows Radiant Avenue going all the way through this property. So there have been some changes to their plans. So that's what one of the stipulations is. We need to see what they're planning to do. So with that, are there any questions?
Thank you. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things were mentioned for community areas, such as, can you point out where that's going to be as well as the dog park that you?
Yes. So I'm not sure if I can zoom in on here. Let's see. This is the office, and I believe the pool is in that area as well. The dog park, I believe, is that area. I can't quite read it on the site plan here.
As far as the the office and the communal area in the indoor or where the pool is going to be located, what's the capacity for that?
I'm not aware of the size of the pool.
But there's also a community area where such as things as birthday parties or residents can
Yes.
set up some kind of party there, so it doesn't have to be in their apartment.
Correct.
Or condo. But you don't know what the capacity is for that?
I'm not aware of what the size is.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
This is an initial plan development,
Okay,
and so with the final, we'll get full details on all of that.
okay, thank you.
Haven?
It would seem like this triggers the need to complete Valley Drive, Homestead, Anamosa. Is that considered as part of this application, additional routes in and out?
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
One of the stipulations of approval of this initial is that a traffic impact study be submitted with the final. Anytime you have more than 150 residential units, we get a traffic impact study. As Carl mentioned, the applicant is also currently platting this property to create the lot. And as a part of that plat, it will trigger that East Anamosa Street right-of-way be dedicated and constructed. They may seek an exception to that. We're not sure if that's their intent or not. That traffic impact study will help us understand what should be constructed to get traffic safely in and out with what street improvements or layout to ensure that our intersections can handle these turning movements. And again, this is initial, and for the most part, when they bring something like this forward, they had an exception. This allows them to get that exception. In this case, it was to not provide a landscape island. Now they can lock down that design, and then when they do, they'll bring in full plans along with a master plan for Diamond Ridge, showing whether or not Radiant Avenue needs to extend through the property to provide access to the west, or can it dead end into the property as proposed today. It will also identify whether or not East Anamosa Street needs to be constructed and or any other street improvements in order to handle the traffic from this development. We don't see a lot of initials unless the developer has an exception that they want to get addressed before they spend money on that final construction and design work.
Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a lovely plan, complimentary comments. I think it has a really nice neighborhood feel. The density's great. Some good work there. My question was really exactly what Havens was in that second approach. What's the time frame on the second approach, that sort of thing. So that was answered very well. So I don't really have a question, but it's a nice plan. I think it's appropriate to what Rapid City needs. It's a good mixture of medium density. Thank you.
Karen?
Thank you. I agree with some of the comments that have already been made as far as the traffic, because once you see the master plan and know that the land to the west will also be developed, there's a lot of houses out there, and Valley Drive is not a road that would take a lot of cars. And I know that Homestead Street eventually will, or is maybe, hooked to Valley Drive. I know it will be, and a lot of people will go out that way. But if you lived in those, like that neighborhood, the shortest way to get downtown would be going down Valley Drive as compared to going down Anamosa Street and roundabout. But I see Valley Drive having in the future to be expanded or rebuilt or something, and I don't know if that's the city's responsibility. It probably will be. And so that's a concern that I have, just because of the density that's going on out there. I agree with it. I think it's nice, and I think it's something that can happen, and I'm supportive of that. It's just that I'm glad that there's going to be a traffic impact study to do that. The second question, or not question necessarily that I have, but we've seen a lot of landscape islands being done away with, basically, because it is hard to have all those little islands full of trees and try to maintain them. And I know that the landscape ordinance is being looked at. Is there thoughts to removing the landscape islands and doing something different, or I'm just curious?
Mr. Chair.
Vicki?
You'd think Karen used to work here or something. Actually, Sarah and I have had that conversation. To be an island means that you have to have pavement on all sides. And when you think of an apartment development, you're usually parking up to a curb. You have to have a parking lot like we have, parking around the perimeter, and then floating parking in the middle, which typically doesn't lend itself to an apartment development. And as a part of the landscape regulations, we need to rewrite that. Otherwise, you continue to see these exceptions, we continue to support them, and it's an unnecessary step for the developer to have to address.
Thank you.
All right, Vince made the motion as he stated, and Karen seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 7 is a preliminary subdivision plan to create 5 residential lots in a development that will be known as High Point Crescent. This is directly east of Carriage Hills Drive on an existing right-of-way that will be named Garden Castle Court. And with that, I'll show you some slides. Yeah, why did we shut that down? Let's do this one. Here we go. This is an aerial showing the subject property. There is an existing right-of-way that is located off of Carriage Hills Drive that runs right here that will serve as access to 4 lots. And that's the one that will be known as Garden Castle Court. South Glenview Place has an expanded right-of-way in this area, and it will serve as access to the northern lot. Currently, the property is located out in the county. At your last Planning Commission meeting, you took action to annex this along with an adjacent, I believe it's about 178 acres, into the city limits of Rapid City. As a part of that, it will then be identified as a no-use zoning district. And at your last meeting, you also took action to rezone the property from no-use district to Park Forest District. The Park Forest District requires a minimum 3-acre lot size. The city's future land use plan identifies the appropriate use of the property as low-density neighborhood. It does support single-family residential development. So the proposed plat is in compliance with the city's future land use plan, and the lot sizes are significantly higher than the plan would necessarily support. Carriage Hills is identified as a collector street on the city's major street plan. This is the layout of the development. As previously noted, these 4 lots will have access from Castle Garden Court, and this lot will take access from South Glen Place. Did I go too fast? Here we go. Here's a master plan of the plat that is before us today. There is another plat that you're going to see as soon as the traffic impact study is completed that is for this area of the subject property that is being annexed in, that will create a total of approximately 178 lots. As you can see, there is open space within the 2 because of the terrain that limits connectivity between the 2 developments. This is a map that was provided by Public Works. The areas that are shown in red identify 2 CIP projects that the city is undertaking that would address some of the existing street conditions would lend support in the additional traffic that both of these plats could potentially create. The subject property for the plat we're talking about today is here. As you can see, Carriage Hills Drive, or this section of it, is cited for reconstruction by 2025. In addition, this section of Sheridan Lake Road, which again, this development, when it comes forward, meanders to the south, comes out, and then down Sheridan Lake Road, this improvement will help accommodate some of the traffic that we'll be seeing when the second plat comes forward. But again, we're waiting on a traffic impact study for that one, so not quite sure when you're going to see it. There was some discussion at the last meeting when we addressed the rezone as to whether or not there were 2 points of access to the plat that's before us today. So what we came up with is a graphic that shows that there is, except for the lots that are identified in blue. So if you come out Garden Castle Road, hit up with Carriage Hills, you can then come down Corral Drive and exit the property. Or you can come out South Glenview Place, go down Carriage Hills, hook up with Park Drive out to Jackson Boulevard, or numerous other exits along the way. But these that are at the intersection of Corral Drive and Carriage Hills South, including 4 of the lots that are a part of this preliminary subdivision plan, have only 1 point of access. In other words, if this intersection goes down, they have no way out. There are currently 64 lots that take access that have to go through this intersection without any other alternate access. These 4 lots would then increase that number to 68. You will see the first stipulation of approval of this preliminary subdivision plan is that they seek an exception through council to allow the 68 lots, or they revise the plat to provide a second point of access. This is looking into the existing right-of-way for Garden Castle Court. Stakes are here, and that road to the 4 lots will go through this area. Standing on the subject property looking back, this again is going to be Garden Castle Court, looking to the east. And this is looking at the property then that's to the east of that street extension when it does occur. Looking down Carriage Hills Drive, looking the opposite direction along Carriage Hills Drive. Looking into the subject property, and this is South Glenview Drive. Oh, look, see? I had Kip go out and take my site photos, so I'm glad I'm getting these right. Oh, thank you. You'll see that the rezone sign is still posted on the property. Looking to the east of what we just looked at for South Glen Drive. And then this is looking, what direction would I say that to be, Kip? Yep, there is the rezone sign again. Get your perspective. And then this is looking more north along South Glenview. So we wanted to put this on non-consent. It's not something that we typically do, but we did have an individual in the audience for the rezone and annexation that voiced some concerns with traffic, concerns with fire mitigation, and what additional development may do to this area. You will see that there are stipulations of approval that do require the property owner to enter into a covenant agreement. And may I just lead by saying they've offered to do this. Even if that exception to the 40-unit rule wasn't required, they stepped up and said, we're going to put all of this development and the one you're going to see once that traffic impact study is submitted, we're putting the whole thing in a covenant that will require anyone who builds a residence to have a fire suppression system that also speaks to the building materials and spacing of landscaping and such to further retard any fire containment. And also a wildfire mitigation plan is required as a part of this. So I think that they've done a great job trying to address those concerns, and hopefully we've brought some information forward today to show you that there are more than one way in and out of this area, and they do need the exception from council. Once that is secured, then they can proceed with the next step of plating. I'm available for any questions. The consultant and the developer are both here in the audience today.
Thanks, Vicki. Eric Ottenbacher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm a little concerned on the access points when I take a look at some of these site photos and seeing how narrow the road is, and I see parking, which appears that it can occur on both sides of the road, like Carriage Hills Drive. That takes it down to a single lane of traffic. That can be problematic when you're talking about, you know, any increase in traffic in that area. Is that also going to be a part of the traffic study when they take a look at that?
Mr. Chair, so the traffic impact study isn't required for this plat.
Oh.
But please note, here's a good visual right here. On-street parking occurs when you have your smaller 6,500 square foot lots. There isn't sufficient area for visitors to park on the person's property when they come to visit, typically. In these instances, what you see adjacent to and what you're going to see as a part of this plat, these are very large lots. When you go to visit, you drive off of the right-of-way and park in the driveway. So think of it if you were looking at a residential street, that some of the photos that even Sarah had today, those side streets off of Jackson, everyone parks in the right-of-way. There are areas along South Glenview and Carriage Hills that are more typical of that higher density that do have parking, but adjacent to this property or this area that's being subdivided, these are larger lots and you don't typically see on-street parking.
I guess my point is that taking yourself out from these lots out to Sheridan Lake Road or Jackson Boulevard, you have to go through a number of, a distance, oftentimes down to a single lane, and any kind of increase in traffic makes it higher risk for accidents to happen, kids running out around cars. It just seems like there is just not a lot of room for increased traffic out to the major arterials.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So, interesting concept. Engineers like more right-of-way, more pavement. Planners like less pavement. It's a traffic calming device. When you have a residential street and you do have people parking in the street and folks have to actually slow down to let each other go through, that's the best safety mechanism we have to secure those children that are running out after a ball from being hit. The wider streets with what appears to be that clear vision, and you've got that 2 full lanes, lend themselves to higher traffic or speeds. Regardless, this developer would not be responsible for those off-site improvements if needed down the road. If we got to a point in our city that we thought that there was congestion and we would have to come back and buy additional right-of-way from properties and widen those road sections, that would be something the city would probably have to partner with.
Haven?
Vicki, you might have answered this, but you mentioned there were 60-some lots then that would be using the same access at that, that intersection. What's the requirements in that regard as far as access and number of units?
Great question, because I didn't mention it. You can have up to 40. Anything over 40 requires an exception from council. And what typically council would say is, if you put fire suppression systems in, then we may allow for additional lots. We'll have to wait and see what they say in this instance. There's 64 today, and that's the one shown in blue on the graphic that's on the screen. They're adding 4 more, which would bring the number to 68. It's a great question. You guys are keeping me on my toes.
Eric Hikas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my first is a bit of speculation. These look like these would be pretty nice homes on fairly large lots from the look of things. You don't have to verify that. I'm just making that comment. Looks like these would be nicer homes. My question is, at what point does it trigger a right-of-way versus a private drive? Is it the 4th unit there, or is it the 5th, I guess? That's my question. So could this be conveyed as a private drive and shared into 3 homes rather than a right-of-way into this area, I guess?
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So the Infrastructure Design Criteria Manual allows for an access easement to serve no more than 4 lots.
Okay.
In this case, Garden Castle Court is existing 50-foot right-of-way. It's just never been improved.
Understood. That answers my question. Thank you.
All right, other comments, questions from the commission on this? All right, go for it.
Oh, sorry. I make a motion to approve item number 7 with the stipulations outlined.
All right, Karen made the motion and Vince seconded that motion to approve with the stipulations as listed. Any discussion on the motion? Haven?
It would appear from the people in the audience that apparently the applicant has worked things out as far as the neighbors are concerned. Jim has got his thumb up.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
I believe that Mr. Skull has spun his magic again, and he did spend time with the gentleman that was here at the last meeting trying to address all of those concerns.
All right, motion on the floor is to approve. Any other comments, questions on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8.
Item number 8 is a rezone application for this portion of the master plan that would rezone that from no use district to low density residential 2. The applicant is in agreement that we should continue this until we get the traffic impact study so that we bring the plat with that traffic impact study and the rezone to the same meeting for your consideration. And so for now, we're asking that it be continued to the October 21st Planning Commission meeting. Hopefully we'll have that traffic impact study before then.
All right, Vince made the motion to continue. Is there a second? Kelly seconded it. Motion on the floor is to continue this item until October 21st. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. End of the regular agenda. Any discussion items today? Staff items?
Just one. I wanted to bring to your attention that this is the last meeting that Wade Nyberg will be attending as he's leaving the city tomorrow. And Kinsley will be our new representative from the attorney's office that will be assisting us going forward. So he's leaving us in good hands. There is a farewell to Wade that was being held in the 3rd floor training room for anyone that would like to join us. And I believe that's from 1 to 3. So a huge loss for the city, huge loss.
I agree, Wade. We've appreciated having you at these meetings when we get far afield like I tend to do. You've been always very good at bringing us back to reality. And I hope you're not leaving the city. Are you at least staying in the city, but not at the city? All right, great. Good to hear. Well, any planning commission items today? I'd look for a motion to adjourn then. Rachel made the motion, Karen seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.